This report seeks to address a chronic crisis in English housing. Basically, we've not been building enough homes, which means that home ownership is now out of reach for too many people because prices tripled in the space of a decade during the housing boom. And now, unless you've got access to the bank of mum and dad to raise a deposit, it's very difficult to buy your own home. But then social housing, on the other hand, is being residualised because we've not been building enough of that either. And so the only people who are getting to live in social housing now are the most poor and the vulnerable. That's meaning that the majority of people, the squeezed middle if you like, are being funneled into a private rented sector that's too often unprofessional and insecure and unaffordable. And one of the results of this that we're concerned by is that it's segregating British society, that our housing experience is a segregating one.
So what are you proposing?
Well, we're proposing first and foremost to try and tackle this segregation. We want housing to be a force for integration in our society. And that for us, I think, means people having some sense of control and security in their accommodation so that they feel they can invest in their neighbourhoods, get to know their communities and so on. And actually, one of the best ways we think of people getting that security and that control is for them to own their own home. So we're making a social argument for home ownership in this report. The trouble is that in order to make that sustainable home ownership more available to more people, we're going to need to build more homes. And so what we do in the report is make arguments for how we might pay for those new homes, how we might find finance for them, how we might reform the planning system to get the permission and the land to see them built, how we might reform the development industry so that the developers actually build them, and how we might maintain throughout sensible credit control, because it's vital that we don't return to the loose lending and boom and bust that we've seen in the past.
And what about those who can or don't want to buy?
Well, you're quite right that not everybody's going to want to or be able to buy their own home. So what we do in the report is say, here's how we'd improve the country's rental offer. And basically what that means for us is balancing out social rented sector and private rented sector, splitting the difference between the two, which for us would mean making the private rented sector more secure and making the social rented sector more flexible. But I should say that even if we make all of those changes I've just listed, we don't think that's going far enough. We think that we need deeper institutional reform still. And so a big idea in this report is a radical decentralisation of power and resources and responsibility for housing from central government and from Whitehall down to local authority through what we're calling an affordable housing grant, because that's the only way we think that we can start to shift back away from spending so much money on housing benefit towards spending money again on bricks and mortar. Because if you look at the spending over the course of this spending round, this country's going to spend about £95 billion on housing benefit and only about £5 billion on building new homes. We think that needs to change, and our idea for how to do that is to localise.